Good evening, and welcome back. Make yourself comfortable. Adjust your pillow. Let the day slowly fade away. Before kingdoms, before names, the land that remembered. Before history learned to write its own name. Before kings carved their victories into stone. Before gods were given faces and temples. There was only the land. A vast, ancient land shaped not by borders or crowns, but by wind, water, fire, and time itself. The Indian subcontinent rests like a quiet world within the world. To the north, the immense wall of the Himalayas rises slowly, layer upon layer of stone pressing against the sky, protecting the land from cold winds and distant empires. To the south, the Indian Ocean stretches endlessly, its tides breathing in and out, carrying rain, warmth, and life toward the shore. Between mountain and sea, this land did not hurry. For tens of thousands of years, it existed not as a nation, not as a civilization, but as a rhythm. The rhythm of rivers rising and retreating. The rhythm of monsoon clouds gathering far out at sea, moving patiently inland and breaking open over forests and plains. The rhythm of grass growing, burning, and growing again. Long before cities, long before walls or written laws, human beings learned to live inside these rhythms. They did not command the land, they listened to it. Stone tools found in the foothills of the Narmada Valley tell a story older than memory. Simple tools at first, heavy, deliberate, shaped by hands that understood survival. These early people moved with the seasons. They followed animals across open plains. They learned where water gathered after rain and where shade lingered during the hottest months. They watched the sky carefully, not for meaning, but for warning. Clouds meant rain. Stars meant time. The land itself became a teacher. The rivers were the greatest teachers of all. The Indus flowed cold and steady from the mountains, cutting a silver path through valleys and plains. It flooded, retreated, and flooded again. Each flood rewrote the land. Each retreat left behind rich soil, dark and full of promise. Farther east, the Ganges moved more slowly, wider, deeper. It carried fertile silt year after year, renewing the earth without asking. These rivers were not simply water, they were memory. They remembered where they had been. They remembered where life could return. Over generations, small camps became familiar places. Familiar places became villages. Villages became traditions. Fire was mastered. Stone gave way to copper. Copper whispered of bronze. But time was never rushed. Here, time moved around people, not through them. In caves and open plains, the dead were buried carefully, not discarded, not forgotten. Often they were placed with tools, shells gathered from distant shores, or red ochre pressed gently into the soil. Even in the deep silence of prehistory, there was an understanding that life did not simply end. No names remain from this era. No kings, no wars remembered. Only the land remembers, and it remembers patiently. As centuries passed, the relationship between people and land began to change. Not abruptly, not violently, slowly, along the rivers, returning year after year to the same fertile ground, became intentional. Temporary shelters were reinforced. Fireplaces were rebuilt in the same place. Paths hardened beneath repeated footsteps. Movement softened into presence. People no longer followed the land alone. They began to stay with it. Seeds dropped near camps were noticed. Plants returned the following season. Grasses grew thicker where they were harvested carefully. Observation became understanding. Understanding became practice. This was not the invention of agriculture. It was a conversation with the earth. The land responded. Villages grew more stable. Homes were shaped from mud brick, walls aligned with wind and water. Nothing was monumental. Nothing was excessive. Life was measured, balanced, attentive. And from this quiet balance, from this long patience, something extraordinary was forming. Not a kingdom, not an empire, a civilization that would rise without kings, without monuments to power, and without conquest. In the next macro block, the villages along the rivers will grow into cities, and the Indus Valley civilization will emerge, not with noise or ambition, but with order, harmony, and a silence that still echoes today. From rhythm to permanence, the first cities of the Indus, the land had learned their footsteps. Year after year, the same paths were taken, the same river bends were returned to, the same elevated ground was chosen again and again. Memory was no longer only human. The earth remembered too. As people stayed longer in one place, their relationship with time changed. Days were no longer only movement. They became cycles. Morning fires, evening shadows, seasonal rains. Life slowed, not because there was less to do, but because there was more to care for. Homes grew heavier, walls thicker, roofs stronger. Mud brick replaced branches and hides. Stone foundations anchored structures to the soil. These were not fortresses, they were commitments. Fields were cleared carefully, not aggressively. Trees were respected, water paths preserved. The rivers continued to teach. Floods were expected, not feared. Channels were dug to guide excess water. Raised platforms protected homes and storage. Grain was stored, measured, shared. Surplus appeared, and with surplus came choice. Some people specialized. Some shaped clay. Some worked metal. Some watched the stars. The village became a system, not ruled, but coordinated. Paths hardened into streets. Streets aligned deliberately, often north to south, east to west. Order was emerging, not imposed from above, chosen collectively. Along the Indus and its tributaries, settlements expanded outward and upward. What had once been clusters of homes began to resemble something new, cities. But these cities did not rise in chaos. They were planned, carefully, intelligently. At sites we now call Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, the earth reveals astonishing restraint. Streets laid out in precise grids, wide main roads, narrow residential lanes. Homes built to consistent proportions, standardized bricks, uniform measurements. Nothing suggests improvisation. Everything suggests agreement. Drainage systems ran beneath the streets, carrying waste away from living spaces. Covered channels, inspection holes, maintenance access. This was sanitation. Thousands of years before Rome, before Athens, before Babylon reached its height. Each house, whether large or small, was connected to the system. Cleanliness was not a luxury. It was a principle. Wells were shared. Water access equalized. There is no clear evidence of palaces. No towering monuments to rulers. No massive temples dominating the skyline. Power did not announce itself. Instead, there was balance. The largest structures appeared to be granaries, assembly halls, and public baths. Spaces meant for community, not command. The Great Bath of Mohenjo-Daro remains one of the most enigmatic structures of the ancient world. A large, carefully sealed pool, fired bricks, natural bitumen, stairs descending into water. Not practical, ceremonial. Water, here, was sacred, not worshipped as a god, but respected as a force that connected life, cleanliness, and renewal. Trade flourished quietly, not aggressively, not imperially. Indus merchants traveled far, following river routes and coastal waters. Beads of carnelian, finely fired pottery, cotton textiles, metal tools. Indus seals traveled even farther. They have been found in Mesopotamia, where they were known as goods from Melucha. These seals were small but powerful, carved animals, symbols, short inscriptions. They identified ownership, authority, identity, yet the script remains silent, undeciphered. It does not speak to us, not yet. The animals carved on these seals, bulls, elephants, rhinoceroses, and the famous unicorn-like figure, suggest a worldview deeply tied to nature. These were not symbols of domination. They were symbols of presence. The Indus people were master artisans. They drilled stone beads with techniques so precise that modern researchers still struggle to replicate them. They alloyed metals skillfully, fired pottery with remarkable consistency. Their cities were efficient. Their lives, by ancient standards, remarkably stable. For centuries, this system endured. And then change arrived, not with fire, not with armies, but with quiet. Around 1900 BCE, the cities began to thin. Standardized bricks disappeared. Urban planning loosened. Drainage systems fell into disrepair. Some cities were abandoned. Others shrank. Trade networks weakened. Life did not end, but the civilization, as it had been known, slowly dissolved. There is no evidence of invasion, no mass destruction, no final battle. The land changed. Climate shifted. River courses moved. Monsoon patterns grew unreliable. Agriculture suffered. And without surplus, cities could not remain. People moved eastward toward the Ganges plain. They carried knowledge with them, practices, symbols. The Indus civilization did not vanish. It transformed, like a river finding a new path. Its silence echoed forward, waiting. In the next macro block, new voices will arrive, not with cities or bricks, but with songs. The Indo-Aryans will enter the land, bringing language, ritual, and questions that would shape Indian thought for thousands of years. Songs without stone. The arrival of the Indo-Aryans. As the cities of the Indus slowly emptied, the land did not become silent. It waited. The rivers continued to flow. Fields still grew grain. Villages remained. But the great urban order, the grids, the drains, the standardized bricks, softened back into the earth. And into this changing landscape, new voices began to arrive. They did not come suddenly. They did not come as an army. They arrived gradually, over generations, through mountain passes shaped by ice and time. From the northwest, through valleys and highlands, small groups moved into the subcontinent. They brought no cities, no monumental stone. What they carried instead were words, songs, stories, sacred sounds remembered with precision. Today, we call these people the Indo-Aryans, but to themselves, they were simply communities, clans bound by kinship, cattle, and memory. Their world was mobile. They followed herds. They moved with the seasons. They settled and then moved again. The land was not something to conquer. It was something to honor. They lived close to rivers and grasslands, close to fire and sky. Horses were central to their lives. So was cattle. Wealth was counted in living beings, not buildings. Their language was early Sanskrit, a language of remarkable structure, built on precise sounds and rhythm. To them, sound itself held power. A word spoken correctly could shape reality. A word spoken incorrectly could disturb the balance of the universe. This balance was called Rithta, cosmic order, the invisible principle that held the world together. Their earliest hymns were not written, they were remembered. For centuries, entire generations memorized them perfectly. Not just the words, but the tone, the rhythm, the breath between sounds. Memory was sacred. These hymns would later be gathered into what we now call the Rig Veda, one of the oldest surviving texts in human history. But at the time, they were simply songs. Songs sung beside rivers, around fires, under open skies. The gods of these hymns were not distant rulers. They were forces of nature. Indra, the storm bringer, who shattered drought and chaos. Agni, the sacred fire, who carried offerings upward. Soma, both god and drink, whose ritual consumption opened the mind to insight and vision. These gods were companions, invoked, praised, appeased. Ritual was precise, but not yet rigid. Fire altars were built carefully, offerings placed with intention. Sacrifice was not punishment, it was participation. Humans acted to sustain Rista, just as the gods did. Society during this time was organized by function, not by fixed hierarchy. There were priests, warriors, herders, and craftsmen. But these roles were fluid. Status was earned, not inherited. Hospitality was sacred. A guest was protected, fed, honored. To refuse shelter was a moral failure. Community was survival. Over time, these pastoral groups settled more permanently. Forests were cleared, fields cultivated. The fertile Ganges plain became the new center of life. Villages grew, trade expanded. Ritual became more complex. Knowledge specialized. Those who mastered sacred speech became guardians of memory. The Brahmins, not rulers, not kings, but keepers of sound, ritual, and tradition. Alongside them stood the Kshatriyas, warriors and leaders. Their role was protection, not domination. Gradually, what had once been descriptive roles began to harden. Function became identity. Identity became inheritance. The earliest framework of the Varna system was forming, not yet caste as later known, but a conceptual order. And still, questions deepened. Some began to wonder whether ritual alone was enough. Did the gods truly need offerings, or did humans need understanding? Far from villages, in forests and clearings, a new kind of thought emerged. Thinkers withdrew from society, not to escape life, but to observe it. They sat in silence. They watched breath. They listened inward. These insights would later be recorded as the Upanishads, texts not of instruction, but of inquiry. They asked, what is the self? What is real? What lies beneath change? They spoke of Atman, the inner self, and Brahman, the ultimate reality. And they said something radical. They are one. The divine was not only in ritual fire, or storm, or sky. It was within. Sacrifice turned inward. Knowledge became liberation. This idea changed everything. Time was no longer linear. It was cyclical. Birth, death, rebirth. This was samsara. Action mattered. Every act left an imprint. This was karma, not judgment, not fate. Cause and consequence. Liberation. Moksha was release from the cycle, not through conquest, not through wealth, through understanding. The Indo-Aryan world did not erase the past, it absorbed it. Local spirits merged with Vedic gods. Ancient river reverence deepened. Civilization layered itself, song over stone, memory over monument. And as centuries passed, these ideas spread quietly, from fire altar to forest clearing, from village to growing city. In the next macro block, these philosophies will meet power, cities will rise again, kingdoms will form, and new teachers will appear, questioning authority, rejecting ritual, and reshaping Indian thought forever. Cities, kingdoms, and the question of order. As the songs of the forests continued, the land itself began to change once more. Trees fell, fields widened, paths hardened into roads. What had once been scattered villages slowly drew closer together, and from that closeness, something familiar returned. Cities, not yet vast empires, not yet capitals of the world, but centers, places where people gathered, not only to survive, but to organize. The rhythm of life accelerated. Iron tools appeared, stronger and more durable than bronze. Plows cut deeper into the soil. Harvests increased. Surplus emerged. And surplus changed everything. With surplus came specialization. With specialization came hierarchy. With hierarchy came power. Across the northern plains, small states began to form. They were known as the Mahajanapadas, 16 major realms, each with its own rulers, laws, and ambitions. Some were monarchies, kings ruled by lineage and force. Others were republics, governed by councils of warriors and elders where debate mattered and decisions were shared. Power was no longer only ritual, it was territorial. Boundaries were marked, taxes collected, armies maintained. Cities like Rajagriha, Vaishali, Shravasti, and Kaushambi became hubs of trade and thought. Markets filled with voices. Coins replaced barter. Guilds formed. Groups of artisans and merchants who protected skills, prices, and reputation. A new class emerged, urban, educated, restless. But with growth came tension. The old Vedic rituals were costly. Grand sacrifices required wealth, land, and labor. Only elites could afford them. Many began to ask quietly, is truth reserved for the rich? Does the universe listen only to those who can pay? These questions did not explode. They drifted, and beyond the city walls, on dusty roads and forest paths, wanderers appeared. They owned little, carried bowls, spoke calmly. They were called Shramanas, seekers. They rejected ritual excess, rejected inherited status. They asked simpler questions. Why do we suffer? How do we end it? Some fasted. Some meditated. Some practiced severe austerity. They lived on the edge of society, respected, feared, ignored. From among them arose two figures whose teachings would reshape the world. The first was Mahavira. Born into privilege, he abandoned comfort entirely. For him, every living being mattered, not symbolically, literally. Insects, animals, plants, violence, in any form, bound the soul. Freedom required restraint, truth, discipline, non-harm. His path demanded clarity and extreme self-control. This became Jainism, a way of life that valued stillness over conquest. The second was a prince, sheltered from suffering, protected by walls and servants. Until one day, the world broke through. He saw old age, illness, death, and a wandering monk. This contrast shattered certainty. He left everything behind: palace, family, power. His name was Siddhartha Gautama. He searched for answers through extremes: starvation, isolation, pain. None brought peace. Then, beneath a tree, he sat, not to fight, but to understand. He observed breath, thought, desire, and as dawn approached, something shifted. He awoke. He became the Buddha, the awakened one. His insight was quiet and profound. Life involves suffering. Suffering arises from craving. Craving can end. There is a path, not indulgence, not denial, the middle way. Ethical living, awareness, meditation, wisdom. He did not demand belief. He invited observation. Caste did not matter. Wealth did not matter. Understanding did. His teachings spread gently, through conversation. Through example, merchants listened, kings listened, villagers listened. Ideas moved faster than armies. India was changing again, not by conquest, by insight. The old traditions did not vanish. They adapted. Ritual and philosophy now existed alongside. Renunciation and inquiry. Debate filled courtyards and crossroads. Public discussions. Challenges. Responses. Truth was not singular. It was explored. And beneath all this movement, a deeper pattern formed. The land was preparing for unification, a power strong enough to connect these kingdoms, a ruler capable of listening to sages and commanding armies. In the next macro block, we will witness the rise of empire, the clash of power and conscience, and the moment when compassion was carved into stone. Empire, silence, and the weight of power. The land did not unite all at once. It resisted. Kingdoms guarded their borders. Rulers mistrusted one another. Armies marched, retreated, and marched again. But history has a rhythm, and sometimes it accelerates. From the eastern plains of the Ganges, a new force emerged, not born of ritual nor prophecy, but discipline. Its architect was a man named Chandragupta. He began with nothing. No crown, no throne, only ambition and guidance. At his side was a strategist, sharp-minded, relentless, unforgiving. A teacher who believed that morality without strength was fragile. Together, they dismantled the old order, city by city, province by province. The Mauryan Empire was born. For the first time, nearly the entire Indian subcontinent was governed under a single authority. Roads were standardized, weights and measures unified. Officials recorded everything. Spies moved silently through markets and palaces. Power became organized, efficient, cold. The empire was vast, and it needed control. Chandragupta eventually stepped away. He abandoned the throne, chose silence over command. History remembers him as both conqueror and renunciate. But the empire did not pause. It passed to his grandson, a young ruler raised in the shadow of authority. His name was Ashoka. At first, he ruled like many before him, firm, suspicious, decisive. Rebellions were crushed, borders secured. But there was one kingdom that resisted longer than the rest. Kalinga, rich, independent, defiant. Ashoka marched east. The war that followed was devastating. Tens of thousands died, villages burned, families shattered. The rivers ran dark, and when the fighting ended, Ashoka walked among the ruins. He saw bodies, not symbols, not enemies, people. Something broke, not loudly, quietly. Power suddenly felt heavy. Victory tasted hollow. Ashoka did not announce a revelation. He did not proclaim divinity. He listened to monks, to scholars, to survivors. He remembered the Buddha, and slowly, the empire changed direction. Not overnight, but intentionally. Ashoka chose Dhamma, not religion, principle, compassion, restraint, care for all beings. He did not abandon power. He transformed it. Stone pillars rose across the land, carved with words instead of threats, messages of tolerance, of ethical conduct, of responsibility. Officials were instructed to serve the people, not merely command them. Hospitals were built, roadside wells dug, animals protected, even forests mattered. For the first time, an empire measured success, not only by territory, but by well-being. Envoys were sent far beyond India, to Sri Lanka, to Central Asia, to the Mediterranean world. Ideas traveled, not on swords, on breath, but empires are fragile things, even enlightened ones. After Ashoka, the Mauryan structure weakened, administrators fractured, regional powers resurfaced. The great unity dissolved into memory. Yet something remained. The teachings endured, carried by monks, by merchants, by travelers. Buddhism crossed mountains, deserts, seas. It adapted in caves, in monasteries, in whispered prayers. India continued to evolve. New dynasties rose. The Guptas would later bring a golden age of science, art, and mathematics. Zero would be understood. Time measured more precisely. Stories written that still echo today. But even as civilizations blossomed, others faded. Cities were abandoned. Rivers shifted. Trade routes dried. Memory thinned. The past layered itself beneath the present. Civilizations did not disappear suddenly. They softened. They dispersed. They transformed into myth. And across the ancient world, from the Indus to the Nile to the Andes, this pattern repeated. Rise, flourish, silence, not failure, Transition. Because nothing truly vanishes, it changes form. Ideas outlive stone. Stories outlast empires. And as night deepens, remember this: you are listening to echoes, voices that once ruled continents, farmers who watched the same stars, thinkers who wondered about suffering and peace, just as you do now. In the next macro block, we will leave India and cross oceans to lands swallowed by sand, water, and time itself. Places remembered only by fragments and questions. Cities beneath the sand and the sea. Civilizations do not always fall. Some simply sink. They slip beneath dunes. They drown beneath rising waters. They vanish without fire or war. And long after their people are gone, the earth keeps their secrets. Along the great rivers of the world, humans learn to build again and again, stone by stone, brick by brick. But rivers move, seas rise, and memory fades. Far to the west of India, beyond deserts and mountains, another land once thrived. A land shaped by two rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates. Here, water meant life. Canals fed fields. Cities rose from mud brick. Trade flowed like blood through veins. This was Mesopotamia, the land between rivers. For thousands of years, it was the heart of civilization. Sumerians carved the first writing. Akkadians forged empires. Babylonians mapped the stars. But even the greatest cities are temporary guests on the land. Lagash, Babylon. Their walls crumbled slowly. Rivers changed course. Salts poisoned the soil. Trade shifted elsewhere. The people adapted until they could not. Cities emptied. Temples stood silent. Wind erased footsteps. Today, their names survive. Only because someone once pressed symbols into clay and fired them hard enough to outlast forgetting. Farther south, beyond the Persian Gulf, lies a deeper mystery. Underwater, when the last ice age ended, the oceans rose, coastlines drowned, plains vanished. What had once been dry land became seabed. Fishermen tell stories of stones beneath their nets, of walls, of steps. Modern sonar reveals shapes, unnatural, geometric. Were there cities before the seas rose? We do not know. The water keeps its answers. Across the ocean, on another continent entirely, stone cities rose without metal, without wheels, without beasts of burden. In the Andes, high above the clouds, people shaped mountains. They carved terraces into impossible slopes. They aligned stones with such precision that blades cannot slip between them. These were the ancestors of the Inca. But even before the Inca, there were others. Older, Caral, Norte Chico, cities without pottery, without writing, yet organized, monumental. They built pyramids, while much of the world still wandered. And then they faded. No inscriptions explain why. No epics remain. Only stones and silence. Farther north, jungles swallowed empires. In Mesoamerica, the Maya charted time itself. Their calendars extended thousands of years into past and future. They predicted eclipses, tracked Venus, built cities aligned to the cosmos, Tikal, Palenque, Copan. But again, something changed. Droughts came. Forests thinned. Rulers lost legitimacy. Cities emptied. The jungle reclaimed stone. Not through violence, through patience. Leaves fell. Roots grew. Time erased noise. Across the Atlantic, in the sands of the Sahara, rock art tells another forgotten story. Once, this desert was green. Rivers flowed. Animals grazed. People lived where now only wind survives. Climate shifted. Rain withdrew. The land hardened. Communities moved or perished. The desert remembers what humans forgot. Civilizations are not monuments. They are relationships between people and land, water and soil, climate and belief. When one breaks, everything changes. And still, humanity rebuilds, always. New cities rise atop old ones. Temples become foundations. Ruins become quarries. The past is never fully buried. It breathes beneath our feet. Sometimes, it whispers through dreams. As you listen now, your mind drifts across thousands of years, across drowned valleys, collapsed towers, abandoned roads, not as tragedy, but as continuity, because every civilization, lost or remembered, contributes to the one you live in now. In the next macroblog, we will explore not cities, but knowledge itself, ancient sciences, forgotten technologies, and questions we are only now beginning to ask again. For now, rest. The past is patient, and it will wait for you. As the great empires of the ancient world rose and fell, there were others who vanished almost without sound. No dramatic collapse. No final battle remembered in song. No single moment where history could point and say, this is where it ended. Instead, they faded, like footprints erased by wind, like voices swallowed by distance, like cities slowly reclaimed by forest, sand, or sea. These were the civilizations that did not fall loudly. They simply stopped being. And because they left so few words behind, they became the greatest mysteries of antiquity. The cities that melted into the earth. Across the ancient world, archaeologists have uncovered cities that appear complete, functional, carefully planned, and yet abandoned. In Anatolia, stone foundations sit beneath layers of soil, their walls never breached, their streets never burned. Homes left with pottery still on shelves, tools resting where hands last placed them. No signs of war, no signs of famine, just absence. Something caused entire populations to leave, not in panic, but with enough time to gather their belongings. What could convince tens of thousands of people to walk away from everything they had built? Not invasion, not plague, possibly belief. A change in climate subtle enough to go unnoticed at first. A river shifting course by mere kilometers. A spiritual interpretation of natural signs. To ancient minds, the land spoke, and sometimes it told them to go. The forgotten engineers of stone. Long before Rome laid its roads, before Greece raised its temples, unknown builders moved stone with precision that still defies explanation. In South America, massive stone blocks were cut and fitted so tightly that not even a blade can pass between them. No mortar, no metal tools. Walls that have survived earthquakes for thousands of years, while modern buildings crumble around them. These civilizations understood stone, not as something to stack, but something to listen to. They worked with gravity, with balance, with resonance. Some stones appear deliberately shaped to amplify sound. Others align perfectly with solstices, eclipses, and movements of the stars. These were not primitive societies. They were highly specialized cultures, whose knowledge was not written in books, but encoded in architecture. When they vanished, their libraries vanished with them. Civilizations of the sea. Not all lost civilizations were swallowed by land. Some were taken by water. Along ancient coastlines, beneath modern seas, lie submerged structures that once stood above the waves. Stone roads, harbors, walls aligned with astronomical events. These were not accidents of geology. They were cities, built when sea levels were lower, during ages when ice locked away the oceans. As the climate warmed, the water rose. Slowly, generation by generation, the shoreline crept inward. Homes were abandoned, temples submerged. Sacred places lost beneath salt and pressure. To the descendants who moved inland, these cities became stories, then myths, then silence. Atlantis was not one place. When Plato wrote of Atlantis, he may not have been describing a single lost city. He may have been remembering a pattern, the memory of many civilizations, that rose during forgotten ages and were erased by forces beyond their control. Floods, earthquakes, climate shifts. Atlantis, in this sense, is not a location. It is a category, a name given to the collective memory of worlds that existed before our own and were wiped clean by time. Every culture has its flood myth, because floods happened again and again and again. Knowledge without writing. Some civilizations did not write at all. They believed knowledge should live in people, not objects. Stories memorized word for word. Genealogies remembered across centuries. Maps encoded in song. When these cultures were disrupted by climate, by migration, by conquest, their knowledge vanished instantly. No tablets to dig up, no inscriptions to translate, just fragments. A symbol here, a ritual there. Modern scholars often mistake this absence for a lack of intelligence. But silence does not mean ignorance. It means loss. The sudden end of trade worlds. Entire civilizations existed, not as empires, but as networks. They thrived because trade flowed. Tin for bronze, obsidian for tools, salt for survival. When one link in the chain broke, everything collapsed. A single drought could end mining. A single political shift could close a route. Without trade, cities starved not of food, but of purpose. Their economies unraveled. Their populations dispersed, and within a few generations, their names were forgotten. Civilizations that chose to disappear. Not all endings were forced. Some cultures withdrew. They rejected expansion, rejected hierarchy, rejected permanence. When pressures increased, population, conflict, environmental strain, they dissolved themselves intentionally, returning to smaller communities, simpler lives, oral traditions. To outsiders, they vanished, but to themselves, they survived, just differently. What remains, what we find today, are not the civilizations themselves, only their shadows. A foundation beneath a field, a carving worn smooth by centuries of rain, a myth retold without context. The truth is humbling. Human history is not a straight line upward. It is a wave, rising, breaking, receding, again and again. And we are not the first to believe. We stand at the peak. Before history learned how to count itself, before calendars, dynasties, and dates carved into stone, there were ages that left no names behind. Not because nothing happened, but because what happened no longer fits inside the story we tell ourselves. The problem with timelines. Modern history is built on lines. Clear beginnings, clear endings, clean transitions from one era to the next. But the Earth does not move in straight lines. It moves in cycles. Ice ages come and go. Oceans rise and fall. Forests advance, retreat, and return again. Human civilization has always existed inside these cycles, not above them. Yet most timelines begin only when writing appears. Everything before that is labeled prehistory, as if nothing meaningful could exist without ink. The long silence between ages, between the end of the last ice age and the rise of the first recognized civilizations, there is a silence that lasts thousands of years. During this time, humans were not primitive. They hunted with precision. They navigated vast distances. They observed the stars. They survived climates far harsher than anything recorded in written history. And yet, they left almost nothing behind that fits into our categories. No kings, no monuments, no empires. Or perhaps they did, and those traces are buried deeper than we are comfortable admitting. Monuments older than memory. Some structures resist easy explanation. Massive stone circles aligned with solstices. Temples built on mathematical ratios that imply advanced geometric understanding. Sites whose construction dates stretch far earlier than the cultures traditionally credited with building them. In many cases, later civilizations reused these places, They built temples atop older foundations. They adopted the sites as sacred, without knowing who built them first, meaning passed on, origin forgotten. The possibility of lost high cultures. The idea is unsettling, that civilizations may have risen, developed complex knowledge, and collapsed entirely before our current historical record begins. Not destroyed by war, not erased by conquest, but undone by climate shifts so extreme, they reset the human story. Rapid warming, melting ice sheets, global floods, events large enough to wipe coastal cities from existence, and scatter survivors across continents. If such cultures existed, their survivors would not remember cities. They would remember catastrophe, and they would tell stories. Myths as memory. Across the world, ancient myths speak of a time before time, a golden age, an age of gods, an age when humans lived closer to divine knowledge. Then came destruction, fire from the sky, water covering the land, darkness lasting generations. Modern interpretations call these stories symbolic, but symbols are often memories that have lost their details. What if myths are not fiction, but compressed history? Stories preserved because they were too important to forget. The survivors. If civilizations collapsed before history, someone survived. They would have carried fragments of knowledge, not machines, not cities, but ideas, agriculture, astronomy, geometry, sacred proportions. They would pass these ideas to new cultures, who would treat them as gifts from the gods, not because they were divine, but because their origins were forgotten. Civilization as recurrence. Perhaps civilization does not begin once. Perhaps it begins many times, each time adapting, each time relearning. What we call progress may be rediscovery. What we call innovation may be remembrance. And what we call the dawn of civilization may simply be the most recent sunrise. After a very long night, the earth erases carefully. The earth is patient. It does not erase violently most of the time. It covers. Sediment builds slowly. Forests grow quietly. Oceans rise centimeter by centimeter. Cities disappear, not in a moment, but over centuries. Stone cracks. Wood rots. Metal returns to dust. Given enough time, even empires vanish completely. What this means for us: if civilizations can disappear without trace, then permanence is an illusion. What remains is not dominance, but harmony. Those cultures that survived longest were not the loudest, nor the most aggressive. They adapted. They listened. They moved when the land told them to move. The story continues. Next, we will move deeper into knowledge that appears too early, maps that show lands before ice, and the unsettling question of whether humanity has forgotten more than it remembers. There are moments in history that do not fit, moments where knowledge seems to arrive before the world is ready to receive it. Not slowly, not through gradual development, but suddenly, as if remembered, maps that should not exist. In archives and forgotten libraries, there are ancient maps that raise uncomfortable questions. Maps that show coastlines as they would have appeared thousands of years ago, before glaciers melted, before sea levels rose. They depict Antarctica without ice. They show submerged lands that today lie beneath the ocean. Who could have seen the world this way? Who could have mapped it? Certainly not medieval sailors with limited instruments. And yet, the accuracy remains. Astronomy before telescopes. Ancient structures across the globe are aligned with extraordinary precision. They track solstices, equinoxes, precession of the equinoxes, a cycle that takes nearly 26,000 years. To measure this cycle, one must observe the sky for generations, not decades. Civilizations officially dated to a few centuries display knowledge that requires millennia of observation. Either they were impossibly patient, or they inherited the data, mathematics hidden in stone. certain ancient monuments encode mathematical constants, pi, the golden ratio, harmonic proportions. Not crudely, but deliberately, these numbers appear, not once, but repeatedly, across cultures that supposedly never met. This suggests not coincidence, but tradition, a shared language of number and form, the teachers without names. Many ancient cultures speak of teachers, not gods exactly, but beings who arrived after a great catastrophe. They brought agriculture, law, astronomy, ethics. They taught humanity how to rebuild. They stayed for a time. Then they left, sometimes described as sages, sometimes as survivors, sometimes as divine messengers. Their names change, their role does not. The reset button of Earth. The geological record confirms that Earth experiences resets, rapid climate shifts, mega floods, volcanic winters. These events do not destroy life, they reorganize it. Civilizations built on coastlines would be the first to vanish. Civilizations dependent on stable climates would collapse quickly. Only adaptable groups survive. And survivors remember. Fragments pass down. Knowledge does not vanish evenly. Some fragments endure. A measuring system, a myth, a ritual alignment. Over time, these fragments lose context. They become sacred traditions without explanation. Rules followed without knowing why. Why this bothers us? Because it challenges a comforting idea that we are the first to truly understand the world, that intelligence increases linearly, that the past was always simpler, but history suggests something else. Complexity can be lost, sophistication can vanish, and humanity can forget what it once knew well. Civilizations as memory loops. Perhaps civilization is not a ladder. Perhaps it is a spiral. Each turn revisits familiar ground with variation. Each age believes it is new. Each age forgets that others stood here before. Sleep and forgetting. There is a reason. These stories feel dreamlike. Memory fades gently, just as sleep comes quietly. Civilizations do not always end in screams. Sometimes they end the way sleep begins, with silence. We continue. Next, we move into the great global floods, the myths that agree too much, and the question of whether humanity remembers disaster better than success. There is a story that appears everywhere. It does not belong to one culture. It does not speak one language. Yet it is always the same story. Water rises. The land disappears. The world begins again. The flood that everyone remembers. From Mesopotamia to Mesoamerica, from India to Scandinavia, from Africa to the Pacific Islands, ancient peoples speak of a great flood, not a local disaster, not a seasonal river overflow, but a world-changing event. Mountains swallowed, cities erased, humanity reduced to remnants. The names change, the details shift, but the core remains. Too many floods to ignore. These myths are not copies of one another. They emerge independently, separated by oceans, separated by millennia, and yet they agree on unsettling details. The flood comes suddenly. It is overwhelming. Only a few survive, often warned in advance, often saved by boats or high ground, often tasked with rebuilding the world. This consistency is difficult to dismiss. Science quietly agrees. At the end of the last ice age, the planet warmed rapidly. Ice sheets melted. Sea levels rose by more than 120 meters. Coastlines vanished. Entire regions disappeared beneath the ocean. What today lies underwater was once home. This was not slow enough for memory to fade. It was fast enough to be remembered. The drowning of knowledge. If civilizations existed along ancient coastlines, if trade networks, cities, and sacred centers flourished there, they would now be gone, buried beneath sediment, crushed by pressure, hidden beneath kilometers of water, their libraries lost, their tools corroded, their names erased, but not their stories. Survivors become ancestors. Those who lived would not remember technology. They would remember terror. They would pass down warnings. They would teach their children to respect water, to fear it, to build higher, to watch the sky. Over generations, fear becomes ritual. Ritual becomes myth. Myth becomes religion. Why flood myths feel sacred? Because floods are not moral stories. They are survival stories. They are memory encoded as belief. They are instructions disguised as legend. Build boats. Preserve seeds. Listen to signs. Remember, the world after the water. After the floods, humanity spread inland. Agriculture reappeared. Cities rose again. But something was missing. The knowledge of before, not because it was destroyed, but because it no longer applied. A drowned world requires new rules. We are living on the shoreline. Modern civilization hugs the coasts, just like before. Ports, megacities, trade hubs, the same places that vanished last time. Sea levels rise slowly now, quietly, centimeter by centimeter. The water remembers. Why these stories lull us? Because they are old. Because we have heard them for thousands of years. Because deep inside, they feel familiar, like dreams. We have forgotten the ending to. We are not done. The story continues into cycles, forgetting, and the strange comfort of knowing this has all happened before. There is a pattern that repeats itself so gently that most never notice. Civilizations rise. When conditions allow, they expand. They specialize. They believe they are permanent. And then the pattern begins again. The illusion of permanence. Every civilization believes it is the final version, the most advanced, the most stable, the most enlightened. Stone replaces wood. Metal replaces stone. Knowledge accumulates, and with it comes confidence. But permanence is not built. It is borrowed. Borrowed from climate, borrowed from geography, borrowed from stability. And stability is temporary. Why collapse feels sudden? From the inside, collapse always feels unexpected because decline is quiet. Infrastructure weakens gradually. Trust erodes slowly. Complex systems become fragile. Then a single shock, a drought, a flood, a political fracture, and everything unravels at once. Not because it was sudden, but because it was already tired. Civilizations do not die at once. They fragment. Cities empty before borders fall. Trade slows before economies collapse. Belief weakens before institutions break. People adapt individually, long before societies adapt collectively. The civilization still exists, just not as itself. The recycling of ideas. Nothing truly disappears. Old roads become foundations. Old temples become churches. Old myths become philosophies. New civilizations reuse. What remains, sometimes without knowing it. A symbol survives, long after its meaning is lost. Why we keep rebuilding the same way. Humans respond to similar problems, with similar solutions. Rivers invite settlement. Trade creates hierarchy. Surplus creates inequality. The same structures emerge, again and again. Only the names change. The long memory of the earth. The earth remembers. Every cycle, sediment layers mark collapse. Tree rings record stress. Ice cores preserve disaster. We read these records now as warnings. Ancient peoples experienced them as fate. Civilization as a temporary agreement. Civilization exists only while enough people agree to uphold it. When belief fades, when trust dissolves, when cooperation breaks, civilization does not explode. It evaporates. Why this is comforting? Because collapse is not the end. It is a transition. Life continues. People survive. Stories endure. Humanity does not vanish. It changes form. The quiet continuation. After every fall, children are born. They learn language. They learn tools. They learn stories. And one day, they build again, unaware that they are standing on the ruins of someone else's dream. We keep going. Next, we move into memory carried in blood, instincts older than language, and the idea that humanity remembers the past without knowing how. There is a kind of memory that does not live in books. It does not speak in words. It does not belong to historians. It lives deeper, in instincts, in reflexes, in the quiet choices humans make without knowing why. Memory older than language, before writing, before symbols, before names. Humanity remembered with the body. Fear of darkness, trust in fire, attention to water. These were not taught. They were inherited, passed not through stories, but through survival. Why certain places feel familiar. Some landscapes feel strangely known. River bends, open plains, high ground above water. Even if we have never been there before, this is not coincidence. For tens of thousands of years, these places meant life. The mind still recognizes them. Ancestral echoes. When danger appears suddenly, the body reacts before thought. Heart racing, breath tightening, muscles preparing. This response is ancient, older than civilization, older than religion. It comes from ancestors who survived by reacting first and thinking later. Why myths repeat across cultures. Flood stories appear everywhere. Fire stolen from gods, great mothers, fallen golden ages. These myths were not copied. They emerged independently because human experience was shared. Different lands, same fears, same questions. The collective unconscious. Carl Jung would later give it a name. But long before psychology, humans sensed it. A shared inner landscape, archetypes, patterns, recurring symbols, the hero, the trickster, the destroyer, the rebirth. These are not inventions. They are memories, trauma that crosses generations. Modern science has discovered something ancient. Trauma can be inherited. Stress alters biology. Fear changes behavior. Survival strategies pass down, not as stories, but as tendencies. Entire populations carry echoes of famine, war, displacement. Even centuries later, why we fear collapse so deeply. Civilizational collapse is not new. It has happened many times, and humanity remembers it. Not consciously, but emotionally. That deep unease, that sense that things can fall apart. It is not paranoia, it is ancestral knowledge. Why we build monuments. Humans carve stone because memory fades. Monuments are attempts to resist forgetting, but they always fail. Eventually, stone erodes, names vanish, meanings shift, yet the impulse remains to be remembered. What truly survives? Not names, not empires, not borders. What survives are patterns. How humans respond to crisis, how they seek meaning, how they rebuild. The shape of behavior outlives the shape of cities. The quiet wisdom of the past. Ancient people did not know more, but they knew differently. They watched seasons carefully. They respected limits. They accepted cycles. Modern civilization forgot what earlier ones learned the hard way, remembering without nostalgia. The past is not a golden age. It was harsh, violent, uncertain, but it was honest, about impermanence. Civilizations today struggle because they deny it. Why history for sleep matters. When you listen to ancient stories, your mind relaxes because it recognizes the rhythm. Rise, fall, return. The pattern is familiar, and familiarity is calming. The long breath of humanity. Human history is not a sprint. It is breathing, expansion, contraction, inhale, exhale, and then again. As you rest, your body remembers, things your mind never learned. You are part of a chain, longer than memory. Civilizations came and went so that you could be here, breathing, listening, safe, for now. In the next macro block, we will enter the deepest layer, time itself. How ancient civilizations experienced it, and why their sense of time was calmer than ours. Before clocks, before calendars, before deadlines, time was not something you chased, it was something you lived inside. When time had no numbers, ancient civilizations did not measure time to control it. They observed it to understand it. Days were not units. They were light and shadow. Years were not numbers. They were cycles of growth and rest. Time was not abstract. It was visible. The sky was the clock, the sun rising, the sun setting, the moon waxing, the moon fading, stars shifting slowly across seasons. This was the calendar. Nothing ticked, nothing hurried. Time announced itself. Why ancient people felt less urgency. There was no illusion that everything could be done. Harvest came when it came. Rain arrived or did not. Life adjusted. Urgency was reserved for survival, not productivity. Circular time. To ancient minds, time did not move forward. It returned. Birth followed death. Spring followed winter. Civilizations rose, fell, and rose again. Nothing was final. Nothing was wasted. Linear time is young. The idea that time is a straight line with a beginning and an end is recent, very recent. It arrived with empires, with records, with control. Linear time allows comparison. Comparison creates pressure. When time became a tool, as states grew larger, time became regulated. Calendars unified populations. Schedules coordinated labor. Time became power. Those who controlled time controlled people. Why modern time feels aggressive. Clocks do not pause. They do not care about weather, mood, or fatigue. They demand obedience. Ancient time invited participation. Modern time demands performance. Seasonal consciousness. Ancient people knew when to act and when not to. Winter was not failure. It was rest. Stillness was productive. Nothing had to be optimized. Night was not an enemy. Darkness was normal. Silence was expected. The night was for stories, dreams, and repair. Sleep was not stolen time. It was sacred time. The body as a clock. Without artificial light, the body ruled. Hunger signaled eating. Fatigue signaled rest. Hormones followed the sun. The body knew when to stop. Why modern minds are tired. We live in borrowed time, artificial time, time disconnected from biology. The nervous system never resets. Ancient people reset daily. Sacred time. Rituals existed to step outside ordinary time. Festivals, ceremonies, initiations. These moments broke routine. They reminded people that time was not only labor, eternal time. Some traditions believed time itself was an illusion. Only the present existed. Past and future were stories told by the mind. This was not philosophy. It was experience. Why stillness feels uncomfortable now. Stillness removes structure. Without clocks, the mind becomes quiet. And quiet can feel unfamiliar. Ancient minds trained for it. Modern minds resist it. The return to slowness. When you slow down, you are not regressing. You are remembering. Your nervous system recognizes this pace. It has lived here before. Sleep as ancient time. Sleep is not linear. Dreams collapse centuries. Moments blend. This is how ancient people lived. Even while awake, as you drift, there is nothing to finish, nothing to reach. Time is not running out. It is moving around you, breathing. The deepest truth. Civilizations did not fall because time moved forward. They fell when they forgot how to rest inside it. Let your breath slow. Let minutes dissolve. You are not late. You are exactly where humans have always been, inside time, not chasing it. When you are ready, we descend one layer further. And now, there is nothing left to explain. No more civilizations to trace. No more names to remember. No more timelines to hold together. Only what remains after history exhales. What survives when stories end? Empires fall, languages fade, stones return to dust, but something stays. Not ideas, not borders, not dates, patterns. The way humans gather, the way they look at the sky, the way they search for meaning. When the world grows quiet, civilizations were never the point. Cities were expressions. Kings were symbols. Myths were mirrors. They were not the essence. The essence was always simpler. Fire at night, shared food, stories spoken softly, so children could sleep. Why we tell these stories at night? Because night strips away urgency. It returns us to how humans listened long before writing. Stories were not consumed. They were absorbed, like warmth. The past is not behind you. It is underneath, layered, supporting the present. Without asking to be seen, you walk on it every day. You breathe air shaped by ancient forests. You drink water older than memory. Nothing is truly lost. Civilizations do not vanish. They dissolve into the next form. Ideas become instincts. Rituals become habits. Wisdom becomes intuition. You carry more history than you realize. The quiet ending. There is no final lesson. Ancient people understood this. The end of a story was not a conclusion. It was a return to silence. And silence is not empty. Silence is full of breath, of rest, of unspoken continuity. It is where everything began. It is where everything rests. As you sleep, you are doing what humans have always done, lying down, letting go, trusting the dark. No need to hold the world together. It has done this before. The last thought. Civilizations rose. Because humans dreamed, they endured. Because humans rested, and they ended, so something else could begin. Now, let the story fade. Let the centuries blur. Let the names fall away. There is nothing left to remember. Only sleep. Good night.